Hello and welcome to the Train Rush with your hosts Craig Taylor and Dave Moss. Think of us as the timetable change that's going to delay all your trains. That's actually probably quite topical, really, as we've been a little bit delayed, I think, in recording this episode. So, firstly, I guess, thank you to everyone for listening to us recently, and interacting with us across social media. Response has been fantastic. I think we're both extremely pleased by what we've got. And, obviously, as I say, we can apologise for the delay in getting another episode out to you guys, but we're busy researching, playing games. Obviously, that's the key thing we've got to do, really. That's what's keeping us busy at the moment, isn't it?
That and trying to work out the focus for the channel. We've had a lot of feedback from you guys out there, which we're grateful to receive. And it's impossible to serve the entire train game audience perfectly. So we're trying to work out which part of the audience benefits the most from what we can deliver, I guess, Dave.
Yeah, and we're going to try some things. We'll see what sticks, what doesn't stick. So keep giving us feedback, and hopefully we'll learn from it, and we'll keep you listening. That's the main aim of the thing, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I would say that personally, I've been absolutely overwhelmed by the feedback to the point which is why I wanted to spend some time working out what we're doing right and making sure we make the best of it. So everybody who's listening gets the best Craig and Dave they can get.
Definitely. So, without further ado, I think we've got a couple of bits to pick up on some of the news items we talked about last time round. So, iron clays is quite a hot topic at the moment, really, isn't it? So for those of you that don't know, they're the poker chips that come in the brass set, published by Roxley Games. And we touched on it briefly because brass had just been delivered when we recorded the last episode. But, I know you were keen to know what the chips are like. Obviously, we've got them out and had a look at them now. I think, they're a little bit lighter than maybe I was hoping for, but they're absolutely functional and really good for the game. So I'm pleased with them to have them as part of that. But Craig, do you want to talk about them?
Well, I've definitely got some thoughts on these. I've seen your set and I had a look at some at HandyCon, and as a product, I think they're nice looking chips. They use non-standard colours, which everybody's aware of who's seen pictures of them. No problems there as far as I'm concerned. They're the only set I'd be likely to have. Importantly, Roxley have confirmed that there is going to be a dedicated Kickstarter for these, and they're starting to talk on Board Game Geek with potential consumers about what the 18XX audience would need from a working set. Some of their published numbers for the denominations and spread are a little bit, I'm going to say rope is a bit unfair, but
I think you'd say it's not everyone's preferred denomination, preferred splits, or bank size.
I think you could be more robust than that. I don't think they're even workable for 1830. They were under-egging it on the number of low density chips, so you didn't have enough ones to cover all the potential positions for 1830, which at that stage, when you're sticking tons of 500 chips in there and it can serve banks of 30,000, you're kind of missing the point. Realistically, most people would be happy to buy one box set that serves, say, 15,000 bank that had enough chips, that had enough low number chips in there that you can serve a normal
play
game.
That early stage of the game. Yeah, absolutely. That's a key part of any poker chip set, really.
That said, your observation on the weight, I'm fine with that. They're casino weight chips, so they're not premium weight chips. It's lighter than you might get from an ultra premium home set. I guess there's one observation that others have made that does resonate with me. They're a little bit slidey. So when you're handling them and you're stacking them, there's a greater potential of them falling over than normal poker chips. I guess it's a compromise you're making here, right? I love the look. I love the fact they're not covered in card suits or Casino Royale or whatever. So for me, I'm willing to accept the fact they're a touch slidier to get the look they have. Of course, if you're more about the tactile side of it, the actual physical touching, then maybe these aren't the chips for you. Details on the Roxy stuff still coming. You can still contribute on that thread on the Geek if you have a strong opinion.
I think you tweeted the link to it out a while back. So check out our Twitter feed. Go and join the conversation. Feed into it. And I think is the Kickstarter scheduled to come late this year, I think, isn't it?
It's late this year, although they've been a bit, say, cagey. The dates aren't officially released yet, and I can understand why. I think they want to lock down their offerings across the whole thing. You've got to remember the 18XX community for this is part of it. They're looking at these chips as gaming chips. They want to make them
functional set for gamers to play with.
Absolutely.
But 18XX are part and parcel of that, and obviously they want to make sure they're trying to account for as many people as they can. So interesting. Let's keep our eyes on it.
Moving on to actual games as opposed to games accessories, big news last couple of weeks has been the pre-orders opening up for 1883, designed by Mario Manzini of 1841 fame, I believe, Dave.
I think so.
The key attributes of this perspective design are it involves a dice, some randomisation, event cards, a la, I guess in my head I'm thinking more like Twilight Struggle, and some mitigation factors that you can play around. You can buy political favour to mitigate the random events. Some elements, so some non-deterministic elements in what's largely seen as a deterministic game genre. High risk, high reward, maybe, or I don't know. The buzz I'm getting back online is most players are worried about the prospects of these things. My position's slightly different. I like to reward innovation. As such, it's quite low price on the pre-order basis for an 18XX, circa £50. Was it circa €50 rather?
€55 plus. Fairly good shipping rates across Europe. Obviously, that may affect some of us who are not going to be part of Europe in the not too distant future.
Sure.
But I mean, I think, as you say, it seems to have been quite decisive. Some people are, as you say, not liking the random nature of it. It does seem as though there are ways of mitigating that randomness. I think, I'm sat on the fence at the moment. I'm intrigued. The price point has me tempted. I haven't ordered yet. I know you have, so we're going to have a copy at least between us. I may waver, and as I've said many times before, a fool and his money are easily parted. So I think there's a fair probability I end up caving before the end of pre-orders. But
I should take your position, and if the price was higher, I would probably take your position. I'm just at the moment. I'm at the thing where I'm liking seeing more innovation inside 18XX.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to see this not fall completely flat on its face if it encourages designers to subvert the format a little bit.
Yep.
I hear you can tell me about another game now, Dave.
Yeah. So following on from our updates the other week about stuff coming from Marflow Games, there's also been another new one that's teased out. 18 Baltic States. So that's going to be a game from Edwin Eckert, who did 1893 Cologne, which I've got, and we'll definitely be talking about in a future episode. That seems to obviously work with some different gauges of trains and ferry links between the various Baltic states. So there seems to be lots of interesting little things going on. At the moment, there is only a small paragraph of information on Board Game Geek. I think it's not clear whether it's Essen 2018 or I suspect it's more likely to be a 2019 release. So we'll keep our eyes on that, and as soon as Marflow shares some more details, then we'll look to it. And I'm pretty sure again that maybe that'll be one that I pre-order instead.
Well, hopefully it'll make Essen, and if it makes Essen, I'll definitely pick up a copy.
Yep.
That said, if it's only just come on the Geek and it's one paragraph, I have my doubts.
I agree. I think it's likely to be one of their 2019 releases. Talking of other games that are coming, reprints of stuff. Tom Russell's got a reprint coming out, hasn't he? Tom
Russell of Hollandspiel fame kindly this week did a nice designer diary talking to the development process, design and development process of Northern Pacific, a 2013 game. It's going to be re-released this year by Rio Grande. It's quite interesting, some insight into the winsome and development process and the value add that John Borer adds to the whole thing, and a bit of an insight into that guy as well.
Yeah, I was very interested to read that designer diary, definitely.
It's certainly not an 18XX style train game, right? It's more of an abstract that happens to use trains as a setting. I'm super interested to get a copy of that. I've already put a order with our local retailer. Second that comes on the EVM order list, just grab me a copy.
That'll be 2 copies we sell, because I like some of the games that Tom Russell does, both in terms of the Hollandspiel stuff and also the one he did in last year's Winsome set, one of the Cube Rails games. That was excellent, and again, that's one that we got on the to play list and we'll be trying to review in future episode.
Don't overcommit us, Dave. Don't overcommit us. Anything to talk about that isn't games or accessories, I guess?
Well, I guess, aside from talking about the games, we can also talk about how to play them, and obviously conventions. It is that season throughout the everywhere are hosting conventions and stuff, and I noticed on Board Game Geek that they're hosting their first 18XX convention in Belgium, in Mechelen.
Yeah, I read about this on Rails on Boards. The Polish guys who did a blog gave it a bit of FaceTime
promotion.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a shame that I wish I was aware of it prior, because it's next week, the summer one. Although there is a December date that I think we're both interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we might have to have a train rush road trip Obviously, no, that doesn't use any trains, but yeah, I mean, Belgium, why wouldn't we want to go and play 18XX and drink some Belgian beer? Or certainly I'd want to do that side of it.
Well, I don't want to lower my standard of play any lower than it presently is. So
it just makes me forget the losses if I drink the beer. So yeah, we're gonna keep our eyes on that. We hope it goes well for everyone in Belgium, and if you are going to do a winter one, then we'll hopefully see if we can come and join you for that. And over here in the UK, we've also recently just had another convention, which you went along to. I didn't manage to make, but
sure.
Tell us about your HandyCon experiences.
Now, HandyCon is interesting. It's a general board gaming convention. I won't labour on it too long because if you're not in the UK and you haven't got access to it, it's probably pretty boring. But it did have an 18XX room, and it's had an 18XX room for a number of years. My first time there, 30 players made it this year, which was pretty cool. They had a tournament, which my good wife managed to come sixth in, and I managed to come stone bonkers last in, so that was good fun. I only decided to play 2 games over the whole weekend. I wasn't in the right frame of mind, I won't lie. Every decision I was making was the wrong decision, and I could see it the second after play moved on that it was a catastrophically dumb decision. Although there was still some benefit. It was interesting to play 1849 again, and playing 1846 with some very expert players opened my eyes up to a few more dimensions and depths of that title that I was somewhat unaware of previously. Definitely given me food for thought on how to demolish folks in a game that you wouldn't necessarily think on first blush it's possible to do so.
Yeah, I've been up to HandyCon, one of the previous ones before, and again, if you get on a table with the experienced guys, it's a great learning experience, and you kind of just have to go along for the ride. Is that my first train pun of the episode?
No, it's dripping in them, Dave. I'm having to scrape them off with a cudgel. One thing I do want to say, last thing on HandyCon, I want to say thanks to Colin Smith for running it.
Yes,
he puts a lot of effort into that. He bought a library of, it must have been thick end of 70 games.
It's his personal collection.
And I'll be honest, I would, if it was my personal collection there, I would be having the jitters all weekends, worrying about rough handling. Now I know 18XX players are generally polite people that wouldn't mishandle stuff, but nonetheless, thousands of pounds worth of clobber like that on public display, I'd be worried. So credit to him,
absolutely,
lugging it up there, letting people use it. He's truly a gentleman.
Indeed. So, without further ado, shall we head on to actually talk to you about the game we're going to review today?
Absolutely. We'll timestamp this so you can fast forward to it if you so wish.
So, today we're going to move on to our first non-18XX. So I know that may come as a shock to some of you. Our brief was definitely to kind of look across the entire train gaming spectrum. So we're going to try this one. We're going to hopefully see how it goes. Hope we don't lose anyone along the way.
Ticket to Ride, Dave?
Not quite going there yet.
Oh, okay.
No, I think we're going to stay still closer to home, really. Okay. Ticket to Ride might be the Christmas special, I guess, really. But no, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about North American Railways. So that's a game that came out in 2016. Was published originally by Spielworks, their first edition. Spielworks usually do quite small print runs of their first editions, and hope to obviously get someone else who's going to take it on and make it a bigger and better thing further down the line. But you know, Spielworks are renowned for their decent heavy games. It's designed by Sylvester, who's got great pedigree, King of Siam, Vincent das Volt, which is a fantastic 2-player game around the fall of the Berlin Wall. Singapore is one of his other games. So, you know, there's a lot of real credibility behind this title, and following that model through, absolutely the it has been republished. I think it got reprinted this year, and it was reprinted by Flying Lemur Games. It came out in the spring, and over here in the UK, Surprise Stare Games picked it up and published it, and I know they had copies available for sale at UK Games Expo, and I think they've still got them for sale now. So that's enough kind of about the overview of what the game is, but maybe, Craig, can you take our listeners through a bit of an overview of what the game is and how it runs?
I would argue that was an overview on how it came to be printed, but what's the game? So if you want to hear what the game is in one sentence, if these anchor references mean anything to you, great. So for me, it's 2 parts 18XX, 1 part Neue Heimat. Okay? I'll explain. So we will explain what those references mean for the purposes of anybody who's not heard of Neue Heimat.
Or the estates, as you might not really want to call it,
no,
I think.
It's not the estates, it's Neue Heimat, Dave. Let's not have an argument over that. So, in North American Railways, there will be 2 flops of cards on the table. One representing shares that are available to purchase in the various companies that can operate in the game.
And they're straightforward, just coloured. One piece of card is 1 share.
And there is a flop of stations the various companies can, between them, buy to improve the value of the associated railway network. Now, the rub here is that you're only, from each of these sets of cards, they're separated into 4 columns each set, you can only interact with the cards on the bottom of the columns. So you have to work up the columns
as the game progresses to be able to access things. So you have to take the lowest in each column away to be able to access things quite higher.
So you shuffle the decks of all the shares, bar 2, you burn 2 out every game, and you create a unique spread of shares. Okay, same with the stations, and the order the shares come out and the order the stations come out will dictate the flow of the game. So each game functionally is unique, but once the game's in action, there's
everything is set.
Everything's set. There's no randomisation.
Yeah.
Okay. So big fan of that. So
it's a very variable setup, but fixed for once the game starts.
Now, without going into uber detail, one of the key things in this is how shares are purchased. The share purchasing feels quite like Ponzi scheme. If you want another reference, it's not Neue Heimat. It's a kind of like a I slice you choose kind of setup, where when you buy the first share of a company, you found it, you choose how much of your starting capital you stick in it. Simple as that. You now own the company.
You get the share, you become the president.
Absolutely. If you buy a second share to secure your stranglehold on the company, then that's got a fixed cost and it's quite high. Okay. The clever bit for me, like the supremely clever bit, is when you're buying a share of somebody else who's the president. Okay, or more to the point, you select a share in somebody else's company, because when you do that, you propose a price. Now, the president then has a choice. Do they let you put that money into the company, bar some overhead costs, and we'll...
I think you split it 50-50, and so 50% of your price goes to the company, 50% to the bank.
Sure. Although that's not the kernel of cleverness.
No.
The kernel of cleverness is: do you let your opponent buy the share, or do you buy the share? And if you buy the share, instead of that half of the money that goes to the bank, it goes to the person who proposed the transaction. So functionally, you're increasing their capital to either maybe enhance their own companies, make a tax on other companies.
And coupled up with the way that the shares come out in that flop, you can be quite manipulative. You only get one opportunity to put things up for auction, and until
of a given colour. So if your proposal's rejected as a junior, for want of a better term, you can then pick another colour and another colour. But once you've run out of colours,
you that's the end of your term. But ultimately, you've got possibly a couple of options depending on the way things are coming out in those columns, as we talked about earlier. And again, the ability to manipulate that and potentially pull money out of players' hands can be quite devious, or for other players to potentially put you in a difficult position because you want to defend your position. So presidency, interestingly, moves on a tie in shares. Whenever there's a tie, the person who has bought the most recent share to create that tie gets the presidency. And we'll touch on the importance of presidency a little bit later on.
No, the other thing I want to talk to about the layers of this: if somebody gets a share off you on the cheap, the worst thing about that not the worst, but a bad thing about it is the opportunity cost, right? Because not only have they got a share, which means continuous revenue throughout the game and then game value for the share price, it's also the fact they haven't put money into the company. The only way money realistically goes into companies in big chunks is when people buy shares. So if I get the share off you for $200, Dave, I've only added $100 to the capital for to the treasury for the company, and that doesn't get you a railway station. It gets you next to nothing.
Yeah,
I'm literally a leech at that stage.
Yeah.
The other thing, however, here's an interesting thing: it's subverting the 18xx format. Once everybody's done their share transactions, we move into the operating round, for want of a better term, where companies buy stations. It's not just the president that buys stations. Okay.
Yes, anyone who's got a share in the company, a minor stakeholding, can transact for the company. And when you're buying a station, there's a purchase price that you pay, which is usually a premium. There's a revenue generating price which will get added to every run that you make, and some stations come with a number of shields on them, and shields count towards value of shares at the end of the game. So you want to make sure, and again, you can see the way that the stations are available to the company, so you want to make sure the company's got the right amount of money in to buy them, because there's nothing worse than being the president of a company and realising there's a really good city you want to add to your route, and you have no money in the company to do it.
Well, like you say, you do as the president, right? Maybe I buy that share on the cheap, not because I want to actualise any significant value out of it. Maybe I buy it because I'm going to waste the company's money on high cost, low return cards, and some of these do exist in the deck, or to open up cards in the row of cards for my company, my challenger company, to buy.
Yep.
Off your dollar. It
can be quite brutal, elbows out. This is definitely a conflicty type game. But, it is quite a small package and does play quickie. So I don't think anyone's going to have 3 hours of feeling as though they're being beaten up constantly.
45 minutes typically.
Yeah.
Well, I would say the other thing around that as well, it's possible to collude. So the flip side of that coin, it's possible if I say, well, Dave, I'll let you have 2 shares in this company. I'll have 2 shares in the company. Now, here's the thing. If you bring in a partner, for want of a better term, that company will get to operate twice.
Subject to liquidity and capital constraints.
Absolutely. So if 2 of you can collude, it can be a very powerful thing. But then it's that whole chicken thing, right? We'll collude until one of us can get the better of it.
Or until the other players have had enough and basically...
And buy in to ruin it.
Either buy in to ruin it or try and take the stations you want and put them in other companies.
Sure.
The good stations are pretty visible, pretty obvious. And you say you're all battling for that same little bit of real estate.
And the third phase is just to talk to how things actualise. The third phase is doing the revenue payments.
It's the run trains phase of a train game.
It's getting the revenue, right? So how does that work? Well, you're going to add up all the green numbers on the station cards you've purchased for a given company, and you can divide that between the shareholders. And there's a little bit of a round-up function for the president. So that is the value of being a president, is from the revenues, you're going to get a little bit more.
Yeah, you get the rounding in your favour as a president. So you may have been, hurt quite financially as part of the process of being forced to invest in a company. Again, I think we said earlier that, if you're forced to buy a share in your company, the price is fixed at 1,000. So that's good because you're dropping 500 in the company.
Well, okay. Well, for context, you start the game with a free-player game with about 1,700.
Yeah. So you can do it, but it's gonna require a lot of financial movement. But back to that run trade phase, you say you add it all up. You divide it amongst the shareholders, it rounds in the president's favour, and then if there's any surplus left over, it goes into the coffers of the company. So there can be a little bit of a drip feed in there as well, but usually it's never enough to completely change the state of affairs. And then obviously you run that through number of rounds. That's dependent on either number of shares that have been sold out of that bank, or number of cities.
There's a card clock, right?
Yeah. And again, you can see those clocks quite visibly. And then there's a little bit of endgame scoring, I think, at the end where you're valuing your share portfolios up on top of cash in hand. Sure.
Well, some of those station cards, like you mentioned earlier, will have shields on. If a company's network has 5 shields on it, each of the shares of that company are worth $500 each at the end of the game. So there's a shield race, there's a revenue race. There's a
shareholding race as well. There's lots of things going on, lots to evaluate across the table.
Yeah, I say I'm surprised how much I like this, Dave. The first time I saw it, you brought it out to a cafe with myself and Lindsay, and I looked at his beige box and I thought, this is just train obsessed Dave, isn't it? And this is going to be like the most boring, langweilig thing on the face of the planet.
And don't forget, I have the first edition, which also has the wonderful misprint of the purple company having white trains.
Oh, that'd been cool. I think I would have been...
They rectified that for your second edition. And I could just paint my trains, but I'm too lazy.
No, I've got some acrylics, Dave. If you ever really want someone to do it, I can crack on with that. I was surprised at how much interaction there was in this pretty dull-looking box. Okay, I was surprised that for a limited number of moving parts, the intelligence of the interaction between players. I won't quite say, for me, one of the strongest, probably one of my few 10 out of 10 games is Neue Heimat. As I keep referencing the estates, I should really expand on that a bit, Dave. So, in the estates, the player's options are dictated by a collection of multicoloured blocks at the top of the playing area. Now, players can only interact with blocks from either end of the display, And these blocks, they represent varying players' interests. So the first person to win a red block will become the red player. Same for the white block, the blue block, etc. Now, on a turn, a player selects a block and puts it up for auction in a bidder proposes the price, auctioneer dictates whether it's a buy or a sell action. So it kind of feels like the North American Railways share proposal transaction. Not the same, but similar. And also, if I win a block from somebody else's colour, it's perfectly plausible I may use it to advance my own interests without hurting them, or potentially use the block to hurt them directly. So both the way it filters your options and the nature of the interactions inside the game strike me as very reminiscent, although I will hasten to say that Neue Heimat, come the Estates, is significantly more opaque.
Yeah, we both love that game. It's a fantastic game.
Super game. Look it up. If you're going to look it up, it's been reprinted by Capstone Games under their Simply Clever line.
It's called The Estates.
It's called The Estates. Have a look at it. Really fab game. But the point I'm making with this, although this isn't a 10 out of 10 game, I won't lie. I think to a certain extent I could probably play this maybe once a week and be pretty happy. Whereas Neue Heimat, I could play every night and be happy. I love Neue Heimat.
Yeah, or we sat down the other night, and again, as part of our prep for this episode, we played a couple of games back to back, and again, there's that nice, interesting element, particularly if you're sat around the table playing with the same players every time, of reading the other players. There's a bit of bluff and strategy there. You've got some levers to manipulate players. So, for example, I remember in one of the games that I managed to put a share up for auction, and it forced somebody to buy it. No, sorry, they forced me to buy it, which was fine because I got the share at a pretty reasonable price. But then, because of what was left and because of the column structure, they had no turn. There were no options on their turn. There were no shares they could put up because they were all companies they were the president of, and they didn't have the money to buy those shares outright at 1,000. In fact, I do think that was your good lady wife that I did that to, and so I'm sure she's probably not very happy with me at the moment.
Oh, no, well, sure. she can compartmentalise when it comes to stuff like that. I'm sure she's got other reasons to be unhappy with you, Dave. The reality here is, though, I don't think the depths on this are limitless. I think it's really good for a 45-minute game.
Yeah.
I think actually for the price point, for the length of time, it's great. It's great opener. It's great closer. Okay, I think that's where it fits for me.
Yeah. Is this something you would? And so going back to the question we always ask when we're doing 18xx discussions, is this something you'd break out to a new person?
Yes, because the reason I would say I'd break out to a new person, and maybe I wouldn't break Neue Heimat, which, like I say, similar brain space for me. This is not in any way obtuse or opaque. I think that once you've got half a game in with this, you know where the game is.
Yeah,
okay?
I think there's a lot to understand maybe on the first playthrough. So you want somebody who's going to be interested in the economically minded games and that kind of thing. But you know, there's a wonderful balance in the complexity, and as you say, it's all open information, all visible. Other than money's not player money isn't open information, and you know, it works. It works very well. I think, you know, we're both big fans of it. And
well, the reason I think it's okay for beginners, right? And I talk about that opaqueness. The game defines the value. Okay, in Neue Heimat, the players define the value, and it's kind of this thing of, well, is that worth 11? Is that 12? Well, that'll depend on the play group.
Yeah, and the subtitle of Neue Heimat is building poker, isn't it? So it's absolutely there. It's completely within the players, and
whereas with this, at the end of the game, a share will have a pretty much fixed value, plus minus blah, depending on how many shields are available for it to buy.
Yeah, and you can use that coupled with the revenue as a very good yardstick to say, I think this share is going to be worth this amount, and that's what I'm going to bid for it.
Yeah, totally. It gives the player more cues as to what pricing they should establish with things, and I think that's positive for newer players. Yep. I also think that it's a good on-ramp to 18xx to a certain extent, in that it will teach certain concepts like companies operating, presidencies, things like that. I don't think there's not enough to it to say it's a full intro warm-up type game. In a weird way, I think Mini Rails is better for that, but that's by the by.
That's a future episode.
That's by the by. However, I think if you want something that scratches that itch, plays in 45 minutes, great game. And do you know what? It's going to be about $20-ish, maybe $30.
And for those of us who aren't in the US, no, it's about £20-25, same price-ish in euros. And I think you know, most of our friends, that we've played this with, and quite often they play 18xx with us. Everyone likes it. As you say, there's a familiarity, a comfort level to it for an 18xx player. It fits perfectly as that opener, that end of the evening game, but with that little bit of depth and complexity. So yeah, I think it's well received.
I'll try and give a well-rounded thing on it, though. I will close out with some negatives on it, if I may, Dave. The money it comes with, the paper money. I understand what comes with paper money, because money is meant to be hidden in the game. It's pretty flimsy.
Yeah.
So I've replaced it with some from a friend of mine, Chris Phillips. He's got some playing cards you can order on Arts Cow that are money currency cards that you can use for any game. So I use those for this because that's harder wearing, it's still hidden. Whereas I've probably played my copy circa 12 times and the paper's getting quite tatty.
Yeah. I think I've never used the paper on mine. I end up using, as you say, other sources of similar things, be it money cards or coins. We've got small wooden coins you can hold in your hand, sort of thing. Anything that just means that it's the player money is the hidden information.
Yeah, and that's fine. It's to hit a price point. That's acceptable.
Yeah.
But it's to hit a price point. The other complaint I heard of someone, and I'm gonna relay it. I'm not sure it's completely legitimate. They felt that when a junior proposes a share being at a certain price, they felt that they said that felt weird. Why is the president not dictating the price? Why is someone who doesn't own the company dictating the price? I think to a certain extent that's the product of being too literal. You have to accept all these things are abstractions, they're mechanisms. Is it fun? It's not a simulation, right?
No.
Is it a game or is it a simulation?
But I'd argue that's simulating to some extent market forces. The market will only pay what the market wants for a share, and so the player is determining what the market value of that is. And as you say, if the president doesn't deem that acceptable, then he does something else or buys the share himself at a price. Vice versa. If he does deem it an acceptable value, then he takes the offer and the cash gets distributed. So
it's a matter of how you look at it, right?
Yeah. I think you say you can overanalyze some things, but as you say, for what it is, for a small footprint game with a lot of depth and a lot of replayability, then I think ticks a lot of boxes, and we're both big fans.
Cool.
So I think, we're just about to wrap out this episode. Hopefully you guys have stuck with us and you haven't run away because we haven't talked about an 18xx. But I think, we will have one of those coming soon. We are working. I think, we looked at the feedback coming out of the poll that we'd put up, and hopefully an episode will be with you soon on that front. And we've got a few other things that we're working on, so we're hoping to get some more content with you.
Hope doth butter no parsnips. We will be getting an episode out with you over the next couple of weeks. One of the things that did come back in the feedback was the kind of sprint release of the first 2 episodes, and everybody been hungry for more. So here's more, and don't worry, more is forthcoming.
Yeah, we're going to try and do it as quickly as we can, and yeah, we will be hearing from us fairly soon.
So that is a goodbye from me, and
a goodbye from me as well.
If you'd like to contact us or stay up to date with what we're doing, there's a few ways you can do that. You can go to our website, thetrainrush.com. Alternatively, you could follow us on Instagram, _train_rush, where I post many pictures of the games we're playing with a variety of wretched Instagram filters. You could follow us on Twitter, our handle being @thetrainrush. We're on Facebook. Just search for The Train Rush and we'll be the only thing you'll find. And finally, if you want to contact us directly and have a private chat, then feel free to email us, info@thetrainrush.com. We're supremely keen to hear from you, be it just for general chat or with specific feedback on the show content or recommendations for future episodes. Thank you so much for listening to the show.